There are many skilled and dangerous bounty hunters in the Star Wars galaxy, some even good enough to kill Jedi, but few have made an actual career out of it, and none of them were like Aurra Sing. Greetings acolytes and lore junkies, and welcome back to the archives. Aurra is not a character that appears very often in the lore unless she's alongside other bounty hunters, but this woman is anything but a background character. From successfully defeating legendary Jedi Masters in a 1v1 duel, to having a collection of lightsabers that would inspire jealousy in General Grievous, Aurra Sing has a hidden reputation as one of the most notorious beings in the entire galaxy. In the years prior to the Clone Wars, her name was known to nearly every member of the Jedi Order, and she was constantly at the top of the most wanted lists in the galaxy. In today's holocron, we are going to discuss a bounty hunter that honestly should more often be referred to as a Dark Jedi, and one of the most notorious Jedi killers in history. If you want to see more holocrons diving into characters often seen but not heard, then reach out and crush that subscribe button and join our order, as we near 2 million. But now my friends, let us begin. Before she gained a reputation as a murderous psychopath, Aurra Sing had a very sad beginning. She got her start in the slums of none other than Nar Shaddaa, the crime-infested planet more often called Smuggler's Moon. She was born to a mother who was named Anuna, who was hopelessly addicted to spice, and a father that she would never know. For the first 2 years of her life, she was exposed to the crime and violence of the planet, as her mother tried to make ends meet by selling ale on the street. Sing was eventually found by a Jedi, Anya Kuro, also known as the Dark Woman, who promised her mother that her daughter would be safe from this terrible life and existence. The mother of Aurra Sing was incredibly grateful to see her daughter would be given a life with the Jedi, and so she allowed her daughter to be taken to Coruscant. However, during the early years of her training, it quickly became apparent that she had been impacted by her toddler years on Nar Shaddaa. Aurra Sing was much quicker to anger than other younglings, and prone to bouts of violence. The other initiates feared her, and began calling her Nashta, which was the name of a six-legged predator from the world of Draw 3. Because she was proving to be a problematic student, she was given back to Anya Kuro for her formal Jedi training. Anya Kuro was known as the Dark Woman by the Jedi because of her brutal and sometimes sadistic training methods. She was known for pushing her pupils to the very limit, but it did get results. She was able to take some of the most difficult Padawans and temper them into powerful, trusted Jedi. Anya did it twice with Ki-Adi-Mundi, and later with Sharad Hett, both of whom would look upon Anya Kuro with fondness and gratitude. Unfortunately, Kuro failed to form a connection with Aurra Sing in the same way though. The child was headstrong, and the two women clashed hard during the training years, but it shaped Aurra into a deadly Jedi, despite being just a mere Padawan. Mundi was present during her learning years, and would even help her lightsaber train from time to time, going as far as to teach her several of his own useful techniques. However, he was very concerned about the darkness that he sensed within her. When Aurra Sing was around 9 years old, tragedy would strike that altered the course of her destiny forever. She would be led into a trap and captured by the Senex pirates. Anya Kuro had no knowledge of this happening, and so when Sing randomly vanished one day, the Dark Woman assumed that she ran away because she couldn't take the arduous training process. Kuro would later regret this decision, and began to reassess her methods after this, believing that it had been the will of the Force that Aurra Sing had left. Meanwhile, Sing was convinced by the pirates that her master had sold her into slavery. Feeling completely abandoned by the Jedi, the young Aurra followed her feelings of hatred, allowing them to fester until she fully fell to the dark side. Still having retained all of her training up until this point, she didn't stop using her Force powers, but rather honed them into a weapon, earning her own while working for the pirate crew. While with the gang, she learned how to ambush and track bounties for the captain, but eventually she got so good at this that the captain began to see her as a rival. Jealous of her skill and fearful that she would usurp him, he sold her to Walaguna the Hutt several years later. Having returned now to Nar Shaddaa, Aurra Sing was back in the very life that the Jedi had promised her mother that she would escape. There, she underwent further training to hone her into the perfect weapon by her Hutt masters. They trained her so thoroughly that it depleted a generation's worth of credits, all in an effort to make Aurra Sing into a career assassin that would make them rich beyond their wildest dreams. She was sent to the Academy of the Anzadi Killers for training in the ways of assassination. The Anzadi were super-enhanced vampire-like beings that could rival the Jedi in physicality. They often made for perfect assassins because their skill was in stealth and combat. While in the Academy, the Anzadi implanted Sing's skull with a cybernetic biocomputer sensor. This only served to further sharpen her already force-enhanced reaction and awareness. It also allowed her to track multiple threats simultaneously and line up pinpoint-accurate sniper shots from great distances. While with the Anzadi, she learned the 4 cornerstones of assassination: infiltration, drama, evasion, and of course, the kill. And after 4 years, her education was complete. But rather than become a contract killer for the Hutts, Aurra decided to use her Jedi training, vampire training, and new skill in assassination to go on a rampage against all of those who had wronged her. She began with Walla Nuga the Hutt and the pirate crew who had first taken her from the Jedi. She would even execute bounties against one of her own Anzadi trainers, and then finally, she would turn her sights to an obsessive hunt for the Jedi themselves, against whom she swore a lifetime oath of vengeance for her mistreatment and perceived abandonment. This was her statement: "Fear me, Jedi. I am Aurra Sing, Nashta, scourge of your kind. I will haunt your darkest dreams. I drink Jedi blood. I nest in their guts. Your nightmares now have a name, and that name is Aurra Sing." A scourge she indeed became. By 41 BBY, she gained a career as a bounty hunter and assassin, though she mostly only took killing contracts. She rarely ever dealt with live bounties, finding them to be rarely worth the trouble. Any live contracts were taken at an increased rate, but this was also because the money was rarely her goal. Aurra Sing enjoyed the thrill of the hunt and wanted prey that would provide stimulating hunting experiences for her. For this purpose, she remained a lone wolf and did not join the Bounty Hunters Guild. But ironically enough, the Trandoshan Guildmaster was fond of employing her services in the capture or killing of other bounty hunters that violated guild rules. But her real hobby was the hunt of Jedi. She didn't kill them willy-nilly like Grievous did, but instead tried to find contracts so that she didn't have to do it for free. But more than once, she mentioned that she was more than willing to kill a Jedi for free, and go out of her way to do so if the quarry was surrounded by Jedi companions. And of course, she would collect the lightsabers from her kills as trophies. Oftentimes she carried a few on her person to use as needed, but rarely employed them against any prey other than a Jedi. Sing was fond of mostly using blasters, grenades, sniper rifles, and poisoned blades to get the job done. She hid her force powers until a situation called for it, and used them with discretion so as to not show all of her tricks. But when it came to the Jedi, she dropped all pretenses and displayed her shocking capabilities in lightsaber combat. In a holocron, the Battlemaster Sin Dralig cited Aurra Sing as a reason why the study of Form 2 was still relevant in the era. Since deadly lightsaber-wielding enemies like her were still around, meant that the Jedi always needed to know how to duel in the dueling form. One of her most notable run-ins was with Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi sometime before the year 32 BBY. In Tales number 12, Old Ben Kenobi tells a story about Aurra Sing that stuck with him for many years. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan would respond to a Jedi distress call from Master Mana Viridi on the planet of Quanat. Upon arriving, they found a badly wounded Jedi Master crawling through an alleyway towards safety. As soon as she saw the two Jedi, she let her guard down and was stabbed through the back by Aurra Sing. Aurra then took her lightsaber. Seeing Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon in front of her, she eagerly engaged them to add more to her collection. Qui-Gon decided to jump to the top of a building to gain the high ground, and to get away from the innocents on the street. On the ground though, Aurra evaded all of Obi-Wan's strikes and handily dropped him with a swift spin kick. She then followed Qui-Gon to the rooftop, and dueled him there. It is here where she takes a second lightsaber that she had kept hidden on her back, attempting to stab the Jedi Master with it. This was a reoccurring trick that Aurra is seen using quite often. She will fight with one lightsaber to distract the Jedi she's working on, before stabbing them with a hidden lightsaber that she's tucked away. It's often a tactic she uses against Jedi Masters that prove to be exceptional duelists. However, this time, Qui-Gon sees it coming and manages to evade. Obi-Wan joins him on the rooftop, and the two Jedi manage to almost get Sing down. But using a combination of explosives and her long ponytail as a distracting whip, Aurra manages to slip between them and drop the two Jedi with a jumping split kick. Though despite seemingly having them on the ropes, Aurra Sing states that the two were more than what she bargained for, and decided to escape instead. It is no small feat for any being to challenge Qui-Gon Jinn at the lightsaber, and despite her landing a few hits, it should be noted that Obi-Wan did get in Qui-Gon's way a few times, which is likely what prevented the Jedi Master from landing a definitive strike. but that doesn't detract from Aurra Sing keeping up with two very skilled Jedi just a few years prior to their own encounter with Darth Maul. From here, Aurra Sing would continue to rack up the numbers on her Jedi kill list until she became a highly wanted individual, but the event that placed her on the map was her murder of the legendary master Sharad Hett. This event happens in Star Wars 1998 number 12. During this arc, Ki-Adi-Mundi is sent to investigate a Tusken Raider warlord, one who was rumored to be wielding a lightsaber. This was in fact Sharad Hett, who was touted as an honorable Jedi Master and a warrior of legend. He had become a Tusken warlord and was now pillaging settlements. Yoda had dispatched Mundi, stating that only he had the skills to match Sharad Hett in a duel. Ki-Adi spent some time trying to understand Hett's reasoning for his raids, and to get his old friend to see the error of his ways. In the process, Hett introduced Mundi to his son, Sharad, who he had sired during his years among the Sand People. Sharad Hett was trained by his father in both the ways of a Jedi and of the Tuskens. However, during Mundi's visit, he would find himself caught up in a massive gang plot by the Hutt clans. Jabba was trying to sell cheap weapons at a premium to the settlers by inspiring the Sand People to attack them, hence why the raids were happening. This would have given even more power to Jabba, as the settlers came to rely on him more and more. But Gardulla the Hutt wanted to foil Jabba's plans, and bought Aurra Sing's services to assassinate Sharad Hett to end the raids. Gardulla led her forces against the Hutt's tribe in an all-out war in the middle of the desert. During the chaotic fighting, Aurra Sing set herself up on a nearby mountain, and waited until the right moment to snipe Sharad Hett through the shoulder, critically injuring him. She jumped down to finish the job with her lightsaber, but Sharad was not as injured as Aurra had thought. The two engaged in a fierce duel in the sands, wherein Hett was forced to complement her skill with the lightsaber. He figured out that someone had taught her very well. Using his moment of contemplation as a distraction though, Aurra Sing telekinetically hurled a windstorm of rocks at him. This opened Sharad Hett's guard for just a moment, and allowed Aurra to run him through with her blade. That was the very moment that Ki-Adi-Mundi and Sharad Hett arrived. Mundi was shocked to see what had become of the girl that his master had trained. However, he sensed that she still had a chance to be saved from the darkness. However, Sing refused him, and turned to finish the job on the downed Sharad. But that's when Sharad cried out, throwing himself at the Dark Jedi to save his father, grabbing her by the throat and disarming her of her weapon. He had her dead to rights, and his own lightsaber in his hand. Aurra Sing attempted to compel him to give in to his rage and to kill her. But Mundi's words of restraint made Sharad hesitate. This moment was enough for Aurra to kick him away and escape. Sharad Hett spent time with his dying father, and declared that the Jedi would be his new tribe now and forever. And from that moment forward, he was under the tutelage of one Ki-Adi-Mundi. And of course later, he too would train under the Dark Woman. The whole time though, he would never forget Aurra Sing. Years would pass, and the bounty hunter would re-emerge after brutally killing Master Pierce and Jim Mikkel, along with a group of Republic peace officers on Coruscant. Jim Mikkel's very young Padawan was the only survivor of the attack, and that was only because Aurra didn't find her worthy enough to kill, since she didn't have a lightsaber yet. But Sing made her a promise that she would kill her when she became a Jedi Knight. The traumatized Padawan described the attack in great detail to the Jedi Council, who all finally acknowledged her as a true threat, and decided it was time to issue a formal hunt for Aurra Sing. Ki-Adi-Mundi insisted that she was not a full student of the dark side, nor the light, but something rather in the middle. But either way, she was still a killer that needed to be dealt with. Anya Curl infiltrated the meeting and declared that she would be the one to take Aurra in, but Mace Windu refused this notion, stating that Sing had haunted the Dark Woman for far too long, and that if she faced her, then feelings of remorse and uncertainty would guide her weapon rather than peace and clarity. Mundi stepped up to be the one to volunteer for the job in her place, and Sharad Hett, who had been present as well, did so also. However, Yoda was dubious about letting the young Hett join in. Sharad insisted that revenge did not guide his motivations though. He had searched his heart well, and was not out for anger, but rather for justice. Yoda was still unconvinced, and asked how he became so certain. It was easy to say those things now. Those things were different when he was looking into the eyes of the Jedi Master, not his father's killer. Sharad, though, simply said that he would not dishonor his father's memory with basing his feelings purely on revenge. Mundi vouched for him to the council, and eventually they approved his assignment as well. The last one to join their team was Adi Gallia, and the 3 Jedi set out to bring Aurra Sing to justice. Meanwhile, Aurra had taken a contract to assassinate the Quarren senator Tikes after he betrayed a criminal operation to the Republic. She only took the job because her old master, the Dark Woman, had been involved in the raid to shut down the operation. While en route to her quarry, Aurra was found by the Jedi strike team in a Republic cruiser. She ambushed them above a jungle planet and viciously shot down their ship. Luckily though, Mundi, Gallia, and Hett jettisoned into an escape pod. However, they would be saved by the Quarren senator, whose cruiser just happened to be in the sector as well. The Jedi discerned through the Force that it was a good idea to keep an eye on the senator rather than pursue Aurra Sing. Their instincts would prove to be correct, especially once the Quarrens landed on the jungle planet, and Sing came out to attack the senator. As it so happened, the Dark Woman happened to also be on the planet, likely brought there by the will of the Force. While Sharad stayed behind to protect the senator, the Masters pursued Sing into the forest, but using clever traps, explosives, and distractions. Aurra Sing separated the Masters and kept them distracted while she went to the Quarren's cruiser to fulfill her assassination. Upon boarding the ship, she made her way to the helm only to come face to face with Sharad Hett, the last Jedi standing between her and her bounty. Igniting both his saber and his father's, Sharad engaged Aurra in a fierce duel. Their battle was heated, with both of them battling with dual lightsabers and landing brutal strikes. The entire time, Aurra taunted him about his father, until he eventually unleashed his rage as a Tusken. She finally managed to disarm and nearly defeated him, until he broke a metal beam across her face, knocking her out cold and ending the duel. When the Masters hurried back to the ship, Sharad dumped the unconscious Sing at their feet. Although victorious, he was ashamed at his rage and how close he had come to the dark side, wanting to kill her. But nevertheless, the day was won. Unfortunately, one of Aurra Sing's pre-programmed bombs would go off, giving her enough time to awaken and escape yet again. Despite her evasion, Sharad felt that he had been able to make peace with his father's killer, and would go on to train with Anya Kuro to further temper his aggression. Aurra Sing continued to take various contracts, but the Jedi kills would dramatically reduce after this. She began going more for money-based contracts, especially when the Clone Wars broke out. There was a lot of credits to be made with Count Dooku and the Separatists, whom she worked with quite often. She would finally be arrested during the Clone Wars, and kept there until after the rise of the Empire. It was Lord Vader who would next employ her services, especially during the hunt for the Jedi Jax Paven. But during that mission, Aurra failed the duel with Jax and was presumed dead, especially when she was dropped into a reposticator filled with sand. Although she did in fact survive, she would lay low for many years, continuing to live all the way until 41 ABY. Here, she would have a run-in with another Sith Lord, Darth Caedus. He foiled her assassination contract, and this was the very last time she was seen. The last we know of her, she was being thrown into a prison cell aboard Caedus' personal Star Destroyer. This was Aurra Sing, the Jedi-killing bounty hunter that emulated General Grievous. It's honestly surprising to me how underrated she truly is considering all of her feats and duels. Of all potential dark side acolytes, Dooku really should have invested in Aurra Sing right alongside the likes of Ventress. She was already extremely deadly, so giving her actual Sith training, or at least dark side training, would have made her impossibly dangerous. Then again, she was an unpredictable renegade out for money and blood, so maybe it was an issue with her ambitions. It's also pretty astonishing just how far she survived. Of all of the villains in Star Wars, Aurra Sing is the one who lived through every major galactic event, even surviving until the rise of Darth Caedus. In canon, she was unceremoniously killed off-screen by Tobias Beckett sometime around 13 BBY, but in Legends, as of right now, Aurra Sing does not have a confirmed death, leaving her fate completely open-ended. If we had to decide her fate, I love the idea that she is found and killed by Sharad Hett when he becomes Darth Krayt. This would bring him full circle from his fall to the dark side, as he cleans up the very last loose end of his past, making for a very satisfying and a dark ending. But as always, my friends, what are your thoughts on Aurra Sing? And how powerful do you think she would be if she had official dark side training? As always, my friends, thank you so much for visiting the archives here today, and may the Force be with you.